Hey, it's Dr. Nuesse from EasyDOTphysicals.com, back again with another video. And in this one, I'm going to give you my opinion on how hair drug testing may actually discriminate against certain individuals. And this was the winner of our recent YouTube poll topic. So I put up two choices on my YouTube channel, you voted, and this was the winner. So make sure you continue to say subscribe to this channel and check out the polls section of my YouTube channel, and you might be able to help pick my next video topic. All right, so we're going to talk all about how hair testing may actually discriminate against certain individuals. But first, let's talk a little bit about what hair testing is as it pertains to drug testing and why some companies actually choose to hair test rather than test with other methods. All right, so first off, what is hair testing? And it's sometimes called hair follicle testing. That's sometimes what you'll hear if you go in to get one of these tests done. It's called hair follicle testing for drugs, or drug testing using hair follicles. That's actually a misnomer. We're not actually testing the hair follicle. What we're doing is we're testing the hair closest to your scalp. So usually the first inch and a half of hair, that's what's being tested. So it's actually the hair that is being tested. And usually what we're doing is we're testing hair from your head. Now, sometimes we can't do that, as we'll talk about a little bit later. Some people are bald, they don't have any hair. Now, we can test hair on your arm, we can test hair basically anywhere else on your body. That, in my opinion, can lead to some problems. Again, we'll talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. But if you don't have any hair anywhere on your body, then this test just cannot be performed. All right, so why do some companies choose to have hair testing done as opposed to any other form of drug testing? All right, first, it's important to note that the federal government, the FMCSA, the Department of Transportation, all government entities are not going to use hair testing. They're going to use urinalysis. That is the current standard for the federal government. So you won't see this in government testing, hair testing. You won't see in government settings. You will still see urinalysis. But some companies choose to have hair testing done instead of urinalysis, and that really boils down to two reasons. So reason number one is it's pretty much impossible to cheat on a hair test as opposed to a urinalysis. Now, here is why. The person collecting the sample, they actually physically pluck the hair from you. They take it directly from you, they package it, and they send it off to the lab. Now, this is quite different from urinalysis. So when you give a sample through urinalysis, you're actually in a closed room by yourself. The person doing the collection typically is not going to be observing you, so that opens the door potentially for you to cheat with things like switching urine, using synthetic urine, something like that. I am going to do a video in the very near future about synthetic urine and the problems that plays with doing a urinalysis drug test. But that is one of the main reasons, is that it's almost impossible to cheat this type of test. Now, reason number two is, and whether you think this is fair or not, some companies choose to do a hair test instead of a urinalysis because they can test for a much longer window. So instead of with saliva, with blood, with urine, you're talking about looking back several days, maybe a couple weeks up to a month. With hair, we're talking about several months, maybe up to 3 months, and then potentially, again, with some of these groups we're going to talk about, maybe even longer. So that is why some companies will choose to hair test over urinalysis. All right, so let's dive right in and talk about the subject matter of this video in detail, the meat and potatoes. Who potentially might be discriminated against during a drug test using a hair sample. So first, let's just pose the question, is hair testing discriminatory against everyone? So what I mean by this is, if you can look back 3 or potentially more months, like I'm going to talk about with some of these other groups, are you still actually a drug user? So if you've quit using a drug for 1 month, for 2 months, for 2.5 months, for 2 months and 3 weeks, and you go in to get your drug screen done and they do a hair analysis and you fail that drug test, are you actually still a drug user if you haven't used in that period of time? That's a question that's been posed many different times. It's one of the reasons, at least, that the government, again, does not use hair testing. And then the next question comes up, if you haven't used drugs in that period of time, should you not get a job because you are still testing positive? Are you actually putting your coworkers or the public at any risk? So again, I pose that question. Is hair drug testing, does it discriminate against everyone? All right, now let's talk about specific groups. And the first group that hair drug testing may discriminate against is women. All right, so you may ask the question, why would women be discriminated against, particularly with hair drug testing? So let me explain. So there has been some evidence that people with longer hair can test positive for longer. And certainly if we test farther away from the scalp, farther away from the point where we remove the hair, the farther away we test on that hair, the longer it will show potentially drug metabolites. Now, we're supposed to be testing very close to the point where we take it off of the scalp, the first inch or inch and a half. But again, there has been some evidence that hair drug testing can test people positive longer if they have longer hair. And typically women, now not only women have long hair, but women more often have long hair than men do. So there might be an unfair or a disadvantage to a woman having a hair drug test rather than a man, especially a man with shorter hair. All right, so number 2 is people with darker hair. All right, so the facts are that there has been research that shows that people with more melanin in their hair or darker hair can test positive for a longer period of time than people with lighter hair. And this comes to the point of the title of this video, is hair testing actually racist? And the reason I titled this video this way is that people with darker skin basically have a very close to 0% chance of having light brown or blonde hair, meaning having less melanin in their hair. People with lighter skin, white people for instance, have about a 25 to 30% chance of having light brown or blonde hair. So a much greater chance that they won't have the melanin in their hair necessary to make them test positive for a longer period of time. So again, there's been a lot of debate on this subject as well, and a lot of science kind of going back and forth saying, is hair testing actually racist? Because potentially people with darker hair can test positive for longer, maybe longer than that 3-month window, than people with lighter hair. And obviously people of different ethnicities have a greater chance or a lesser chance of having that more melanin in their hair, having darker hair. So that is group number 2. So group number 3 is bald people. All right, so as I stated earlier, if you're bald, if you have no hair on your head, we are going to potentially take hair from your body. Now, the reason why these hair tests might be discriminatory against these people comes down to how hair actually grows on your head as opposed to on your body. Now, think of it this way. You can grow very, very long hair on your head, but you can't really grow long hair, like let's say on your arm or on your body in general. It stops growing. Now the reason is that your hair continues to grow for up to years on your head. It will just continue to grow before it goes dormant. There's a dormant stage where it just stops growing and then eventually it sheds. On your arm, on your body, your hair has a much longer dormant phase. So it will grow a little bit and then it will stay dormant for an extended period of time. So let's look at how these drug tests work. So what's happening is if you're using a drug, you're continuously putting metabolites out in your hair as it grows. So if your hair is continuing to grow and we test just the first inch, inch and a half, we're going to be able to then look back for 3 months potentially for what you have done, or the drugs you have done for 3 months, because it's just been deposited in that 1.5 inch of hair away from your head. If your hair grows, let's say on your arm, and then goes dormant and just sits there for an extended period of time, maybe you stopped doing the drug 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, or even longer, but the metabolites are still in the hair because it's been sitting there dormant. I hope that makes sense. Now, the science is not really fleshed out. This is more just a question that I've kind of posed to myself of, is this actually discriminatory to people that have to have a body sample as opposed to a head sample? But I think it does make sense that we could be looking back further because of how the hair actually grows and goes dormant on your body, as opposed to how it grows and goes dormant on your head. All right, so I hope that was very helpful, useful, and concise. Again, this is my opinion. I am a licensed drug collector, drug sample collector, so I do think about these subjects, read a lot about them as well. There's science, again, on both sides. All right, until next time, everybody, stay happy, stay healthy. I'll catch everyone in the next video.